You're listening to Popcorn Poops, episode 90, in which we watch and discuss Darren Aronofsky's 2008 film The Wrestler for hashtag Poopling Picks Month. If you'd like to sync this podcast episode up to the movie, go ahead and start the film and then press pause as soon as the title card reading Fox Searchlight Pictures Presents completely fades to black. We'll get things started here soon, but first here's a word from our poo pals over at the projection booth.
Hi, I'm Mike White.
And I'm Rob St. Mary.
And we're the hosts of the Projection Booth podcast.
If you haven't heard of the Projection Booth, that's okay.
But we think it's time that you have.
We've been doing this for over 3 years now.
And we think we're doing a pretty good show.
Every week we look at a different film and put it in context.
We try to bring you interviews with the people behind the films.
Or experts on a subject matter covered in the film.
We don't specialize in any one particular genre or type of film.
We try to examine every aspect of cinema.
From every corner of the globe.
Even at 3 years, we barely just scratched the surface.
But we're ready. We're ready for you to listen to us.
That's right. Now's the time to give us a shot.
Download us through our free smartphone app.
Or through Stitcher, iTunes, Geek Juice Radio, Jackalow.
Or our website.
Projection-booth.com.
We'll keep making great shows.
Now it's your turn to listen to.
We are the Popcorn Poops. Welcome to Popcorn Poops, the best married couple movie podcast / commentary track hybrid audio program on the internet. My name is Dustin, and with me as always is my beautiful, radiant, lovely wife and co-host, Jessica. Hello.
Hello, that was a pretty fantastic introduction.
Thank you very much. I have vocabulary words that I can use with my mouth to elicit a certain response from you, and that response was happiness, I think.
Yeah.
I can read your face and see that. How was your week?
I mean, well, you know, I'm a Pokemon master, so I'm out there hitting the streets, just, you know, training.
Pokemon Go, taking over the world. I believe you have a funny anecdote to share with the audience, the listeners, about Pokemon Go.
Oh, yeah, just I'm teaching a summer class at UTC, and the first day we came back to class after Pokemon Go had come out, I was, you know, everybody was catching Pokemon in the room, and I was just like, okay, guys, just so you know, get it out of your system, because catching a Pokemon in the classroom is not an excuse to take out your phone. And one of the students was like, well, but what if it's a Mewtwo? And I was like, well, obviously, I'm a logical person. You know, if it's a Mewtwo, right?
Let's be rational about
Let's be
this.
rational. I'm going to need to take out my phone, too. But
right on. Well, I'm sure that you are very liked as a teacher. I'm sure if I had a teacher that was into Pokemons when I was in college, I'd be like, you're the greatest professor of all time. I love you so much. Please kiss me.
Oh my God.
As always, you can find us on our website at popcornpoops.com. You can subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and YouTube. That's right, YouTube. We have a YouTube channel. Nothing on there except the episodes, but we do put every single podcast up so you can enjoy it there. On social media, you can follow us on Twitter at popcornpoops, or individually, I am at Dusty Cram Cram.
And I'm at J. Casper Kramer.
You can like us on Facebook and also follow us on Instagram, where we're posting some cool pictures from time to time about stuff. And social media is really the best place to stay updated about the show, including our weekly movie still identification game. That's where we post it all over social. And if you want to enjoy that excellent, wonderful, whole hell of a lot of fun game with us, then that's the place to do it. You can also follow our Twitch channel, and that's Pixel Poops. We call ourselves the Pixel Poops over there. It's very cute, and it's at twitch.tv/thepixelpoops. We don't have a schedule or anything like that, so when you subscribe to our channel, be sure to turn on notifications so you know when we go live, whenever random moment that may be. If you want to support the show, we do have a merchandise shop on our website where you can buy t-shirts and buttons and tote bags. I think we've got a mug up there now, a Caw Travel mug or something like that. You can also donate to us directly by going to our website and clicking on the giant pink donut button that's on the right sidebar. You can also sign up for a free trial at audibletrial.com/popcornpoops, where you will receive a free audiobook that's yours to keep forever, even if you don't continue with your trial after it has expired. The very best way to support the show, just so you know, is by submitting a rating and review for us on iTunes and or Stitcher. Yes, you can submit to both. And if you submit us a review, if you write us a little review, we will read it on the show. Speaking of which, do we have a review to read today?
Absolutely not.
Which is why it's so imperative that you, our dearest poopling, go to if you haven't done this yet, go to iTunes or Stitcher. Leave us a little star rating, whatever you think it is we deserve. We do like honesty. Please be honest in your review.
We do.
But we also really like 5 stars. Do with that what you will. But yeah, we definitely will read that review on the show, no matter what you write. So think of the weirdest, craziest shit you can make us say, and we'll almost definitely say it. This month we have a theme, as we do every single month, and this month's theme is hashtag Poopling Picks Month, which is basically just listener request month. And this week we'll be watching Darren Aronofsky's 2008 film The Wrestler, requested by David Dassoff from Nashville, Tennessee. Let's listen to David's voicemail.
Hey guys, my name is David Dassoff from Nashville, Tennessee, and I absolutely love your podcast. I wanted to throw my hat in the ring and suggest Darren Aronofsky's 2009 film, The Wrestler. First off, on a personal level, this is one of the major movies that made me want to one day be a director of photography. It also helped me start looking at film with a more critical eye. Secondly, the film does a wonderful job of illustrating two parallel characters with the same struggle. What it's like to grow old and no longer be good or relevant in a field you used to dominate. Mickey Rourke totally sells the audience as an aging wrestler where his days are obviously numbered. And on the other side of that coin, Marissa Tomei plays a stripper that has to compete with younger, up-and-coming talent only to be cast aside. The film is utterly heartbreaking, yet positive and uplifting all at the same time, creating a perfect storm of emotion. So there you have my reason for why you should choose The Wrestler. Thanks for the consideration, guys, and keep up the good work.
Thanks a bunch, David. Let's get to it. Sinkers, press play at the beep after the countdown. Ready? 3, 2, 1. And we're off.
So, had you seen this movie before? I'm assuming you had.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I saw it in theaters.
Oh, did you?
Yes, definitely. I went to the cinema. To see The Wrestler with Darren Aronofsky. Yes. Had a very good time. And we're opening here. We're opening the movie with, what is this song? I've got it written in my notes here.
I have it in my notes.
Mental Health or something?
Mental Health's Quiet Riot.
Oh, by Quiet Riot.
Sorry.
Mental Health.
That shows how much I know.
The Mental Health that owns Quiet Riot, and that's the name of the song. No, it's actually open parenthesis, Bang Your Head, close parentheses, Mental Health by Quiet Riot.
There we go.
Quiet Riot. I mean, this movie is wall-to-wall, junky, shitty hair metal from the 80s, which is kind of perfect, but it's also like there are the lyrics that they choose, the songs that they choose have lyrics that I feel are consistent with the themes and the subtext and whatnot.
And they even do it a couple times where there are just a couple moments where they only give us like one or two lines from the song, but it's pretty much exactly what that character is going through in that moment.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So it's nice.
It's in some cases it's
almost
kind
like
of
on the nose. Yeah,
it's pretty blatant. It's almost like not even subtext. It's just text at that point.
Which I would typically critique kind of negatively, except it flows so well into this weird kind of movie.
Yeah,
so.
It definitely works. Some of the lyrics for this song, Bang Your Head, Mental Health, include, I'm an axe grinder, pile driver, which of course it's a movie about a wrestler, and I'm remonstrated, outdated, which is definitely it's about kind of losing your edge or growing out of your field, I guess. Growing old, too old to be an expert in your field.
Look at the first thing that we get. So we get a bunch of just cheering and noise and chaos to the music and all these magazine covers and stuff from when he was in his prime.
Yeah, magazine and ad clippings, coupled with these radio broadcasts and commentary that give us the history of this character played by Mickey Rourke, Randy the Ram Robinson, as a pro wrestler through the years. We're seeing Mickey Rourke's face before and after his real life plastic surgery. So we're really kind of getting the scope of not only this character, but the actor as well, and kind of what he's put himself through, much like this actor. I feel like the casting is very reflective of the character that we're seeing here, and we'll talk about that a little bit later.
And then, of course, the first thing that we see, well, it's not even see, it's the first thing we hear is coughing.
Yeah.
We hear coughing before we ever see anything. And in that moment, having never seen this movie before, in that moment, I hit that beat and I'm just like, oh, I know what this is going to be about. And I could just tell immediately.
This guy in the red vest right here that we're looking at, he's signing an autograph for, is Robert Siegel. He's the screenwriter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
But it is the opening, hearing that cough and, cutting from that, the really kind of glossy, title sequence, colorful, glossy title sequence in which it's very upbeat, it's very much kind of indicative of a life of success, I guess, and that's what we're seeing. It's such a stark contrast, what we're seeing the first thing in this movie. Of course, the first thing we hear is Randy coughing and hacking, slumped over in a folding chair in a children's classroom where he's just wrestled inside this public elementary school after hours. The grain in the film is really high. This was shot on 16 millimeter film by Maurice Alberti, who's an excellent director of photography, who's worked on such things as Todd Solondz Happiness, Velvet Goldmine, Taxi to the Dark Side, as recently as on Creed, and then also on The Visit. So, she's done like...
The Visit, like
the
M. Night Shyamalan?
Yeah, so she's done everything from like, glossy films to independent film to documentaries to documentary style found footage movies. Like, she's done it all. And this is, I feel like the photography in this, the cinematography in this is really kind of indicative of the kind of story that we're getting. It's very raw.
Yeah.
It's high grain, high contrast, and in places almost documentary-esque.
Yeah.
So I think that works really well, and she does an excellent job photographing this film.
And so here we're starting off with just showing his world just going down. He can't even get into the trailer that he lives in.
Right.
He lives in, we know he lives in a trailer park, or at least we will definitely know it soon if you haven't guessed it yet by this point in the movie. But he can't even get into the trailer that he lives in.
Right.
Like, the state that his life is at, he's getting into the back of his beat up old van to go to sleep and is messed up, and he's having to like take medicine and whatever for his back pain and stuff. I think he said he threw out his back or something like that.
He's trying
or
to get
maybe he's taking steroids or something right now.
Yeah, trying to get his ice pack out of his trailer, and his landlord or whatever, the trailer park caretaker or whatever, Lenny, played by Mark Margolis, who's not in this movie very much, but does a good job with. I mean, he's a great actor. He's a great character actor. Played a great part on Breaking Bad. A lot of people will remember him for. And coming back from the wrestling match before he gets home, we were talking about the songs kind of being a little bit on the nose.
Right, yeah.
And the song he's listening to in the car is "Don't Know What You Got Till It's Gone" by Cinderella.
And you see on the dash, while that's playing, the action figure of himself.
Right.
So it's like, if you haven't gotten the point yet, then here you go.
Well, exactly. He keeps an action figure of himself on the dash, and you see what he's looking at now, which are pictures of himself in his prime. And he keeps himself surrounded by his past, like, these photos and all of this stuff that he intentionally keeps around, and it kind of makes his present so much bleaker than it really needs to be.
I like some of these moments in this movie right here, like the one we're getting right now, where the movie is teaching me about him, but tricks me at first. So, like, in this first scene before I know him, he's sleeping in his van, and there are a bunch of kids banging on his windshield and stuff and telling him to wake up, and you think they're harassing him. At least that's the feeling I got from that moment. And when he wakes up and acts like he's pissed, I get the impression that he's going to be angry at them. But instead it comes out and he's the guy that all the kids love.
Yeah. And that's, I think that's a good point to make, that he still receives some kind of adoration from somebody. Mm-hmm. And the adoration that he receives are from old fans. We see people who do appreciate him.
Oh yeah, when he does matches and stuff, he's still the main thing.
Exactly. Like, he doesn't go unappreciated in this movie. I feel like he doesn't get compensated the way he used to, obviously, financially or fiscally,
right.
But emotionally, I feel like at least what he's getting from third parties and people around him is that adoration.
Right, in that environment. But then here's the real world, right?
Exactly. Well, he's getting adoration from kids
two
and
lives.
old fans, and then he's getting ridiculed by his superiors at work. You know, we've got this character here, Wayne, played by Todd Barry, stand-up comic, who just does an excellent job at playing a wonderfully sniveling little weasel, right?
Yeah. Just an awful boss. Just the kind of guy who, when you hear his backstory without ever hearing his backstory. You know he was picked on in high school. You know he was always smaller than the other kids, that he probably didn't have a lot of friends, whatever, and he's worked his way up in this grocery store, and now he's, asserting his authority over this guy who, when they were in their prime, was, the top dog.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And now he has the opportunity to assert his authority over this guy and give him hell, and he
not
does.
that he's any great in any great lofty place or anything like that. But he's
got a shit little office in the back of a dirty grocery store
where he watches porn and
right.
shit.
Yeah. No.
And doesn't seem to care when people walk in on him watching porn. That's a very strange moment later in the movie, but I think it colors his character very interestingly. Now we're seeing kind of a locker room scene behind the scenes of a match that Randy is getting ready for. A lot of these locker room scenes, I think, especially when they start working through their routines and whatnot, a lot of that is improvised. Okay. Because a lot of the people in this movie are
actual wrestlers.
Okay. And as I understand it, they're all with, I don't know if you, all right, I'm going to put this out there. I don't know a lot about pro wrestling, and that's okay.
I certainly don't.
No one's perfect. But I don't know if you call it a league or an organization or something like that, but a lot of the wrestlers in this movie are with the Ring of Honor wrestling organization, pro wrestling organization. Some of them...
Are they using their real names in this movie?
Some of
their
them
real
are.
stage names,
Yeah,
I mean?
some of them are. I don't know if all of them are. I didn't dig that deep into research. I know that there are some alumni from various other pro wrestling organizations, but there were a couple of events that they shot different matches in this movie at, and they were, as I understand, Ring of Honor events.
Okay.
So I think that's probably how they got a lot of their cast of extras. But yeah, the kind of the things that they're talking about, I feel like in maybe a larger organization, perhaps like the WWE, the story line or the plot points in these overarching stories that like go all the way from the beginning of the season all the way to
Right.
WrestleMania, I feel like they're probably dictated from above.
I would think that.
Right. Whereas these guys, like indie wrestlers, wrestling in community centers and churches sometimes, and public elementary schools and stuff like that, I feel like they probably just work out their own routines, much like we're seeing in the locker
Right.
room scene here. And like I said, I believe that a lot of this is in fact improvised. And I find that really fascinating.
Here's another moment, like the one earlier with the kids, where I was, the movie took me for a little ride, where I see him taping this teeny tiny little razor to his wrist. And I'm thinking to myself, oh shit, is he kind of dirty? Like, is he gonna fight kind of dirty and tell this guy that they're doing whatever, and then he's gonna go out there and actually cut him? Like, that was the impression that I got at first. And of course, that's not what's about to happen.
No.
But this movie does that a number of times, where they start to build up this character and give you the image that they think that you are going to assume, and which, to be fair, I did assume. I assumed he was going to be a pretty shitty person. And it turns out that he's an incredibly likable character.
Oh, so like
regardless of all the things that he does.
He has like no ego.
Yeah.
It's
which
like,
is crazy.
It's like, of course he does all of this for selfish reasons. I guess in a way he's doing this for... But I feel like this is really a movie about art. It's about a guy who is a starving artist, and we'll get into that a little bit later when we talk about his financial situation. But I feel like this is really a movie about what one will put themselves through for art. And when you look at it that way, can you really say that that's a selfish enterprise?
Right.
If you keep yourself.
It is a selfish enterprise when you have people who depend on you, though.
Yeah, and this movie digs into that a little bit. And he's lost people in his life because he did practice, what is ultimately a selfish act. But once you've lost everything and this is all you have, I feel like there's no ego to be had. What ego can he have about this anymore? I think he does it because he loves it.
Well, I mean, characters could have an ego at this point.
Sure.
But this character doesn't, though.
Sure. And yes, like you said, he is supremely likable and really only does one really terrible thing in this movie.
Right.
And that's later on. He gets angry and he kind of breaks down, and it's the one really moment of heightened emotion, I think, in this movie. Maybe there's a couple of them, but yeah, I think that he really.
But you've got to have your characters make bad choices, or it's not an interesting story.
Exactly, and it's earned. Like, I feel it's earned.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
It's a terrible thing, but I think it's earned. It doesn't come out of nowhere. And we see him actually cutting himself with the razor he took into the ring right now. I feel like there's kind of a parallel with Rocky, the movie Rocky, having the character Mickey cut his eye with a razor blade just so he could continue to perform, whereas with Ram, it's part of the performance.
Right, yeah.
I think that there's
that's definitely there.
An interesting examination that you can make there. Mickey Rourke actually cut himself
Did he really?
To quote unquote, and this is a wrestling term, to quote unquote get color, as pro wrestlers actually do to spice up matches.
Really?
My dad told me years ago that what pro wrestlers would do is they would cut themselves and then they would like put petroleum jelly or something over top of it, so it would keep it sealed until you hit it. And then when you hit it, and I actually just hit myself in the head, you could probably hear that in the mic. And when you hit it, it would open up and you would start bleeding. I don't know if that's common practice. I don't know how much Dad knows about professional wrestling. I've never really followed up on that. But that's a thing that I heard.
I mean, I guess we should talk about professional wrestling in our past then, because that's something that.
Sure. I don't really have you've been to a wrestling match.
I have. I've been to one. Mm-hmm. See, it was a big one too.
I haven't.
It was in like one of the, it was at the, where'd we graduate in high school?
It's called something else now, but at the time it was the Gaylord Entertainment Center.
The GEC.
It's Bridgestone now, or Bridgestone?
Something, whatever.
Bridgestone
Anyways, it was there. It was a big WWE match, or F, I don't know.
Maybe at the time it was WWF, yeah.
It might have been F at the time. But yeah, I had a friend who their family was really into wrestling, and I guess they had an extra ticket, and so they let me go with them when they went, and I had never been to anything like that, and it was fun. I mean, it was gosh, you get there, and for someone who
it's very soapy,
doesn't care about wrestling at all and doesn't have any interest in it or whatever, going to it and watching it, you get all caught up in it. It's emotional and heightened,
and it's very soapy. It's very, I mean, and I don't say that just because it's heightened emotions, and of course that's part of it, but like it's like a soap opera in the storyline. There are several storylines going at the same time, and they all cross paths and extend over each other and are long-term storylines. Like they go over the course of an entire season of wrestling all the way up to the big event, whatever that may be, depending on the organization. I guess in WWE would be WrestleMania. And there are, of course, a series of minor events leading up to the big event and all that kind of stuff. And, I read this really interesting article about pro wrestling that made me kind of want to get into it a little bit and try to figure it out. But it was talking about how these storylines, while they seem kind of maybe a little facile and maybe a little rote and obviously kind of on the nose emotionally,
right? Yeah, of course.
The most extreme heightened version of the emotions that they're dealing with.
It's like you take the soapiest soap opera and you just wring it dry until you've got like just the juiciest drips.
But imagine a soap opera in which people who were in the soap opera actually did get hurt. And when they actually got hurt, that actually affected storylines that were currently going on. Or people in the soap opera had actual real world rivalries which caused them to do things in the ring that were not scripted, which then they forced to make a part of the storyline.
Right.
So the article ended up ultimately saying, something along the lines of, once you understand pro wrestling, it's not about, trying to identify what's fake. It's trying to, because it's all fake, so to speak. It's trying to identify what's real.
Right.
And
right.
that becomes
And
the fun part, where you're like, all of this is scripted and all of this is fake, but that moment right there, that was genuine. There's something there. And those are the moments that you kind of look for and that kind of end up shaping, your enjoyment of the sport, if you want to call it that.
I just remembered something about the match, and I should have looked it up to see who it was, because I'm sure I could figure it out with the internet. But in the match that I saw, I remembered there was some guy who had a relationship with a mop, I think, and the mop got... somebody put it through like a wood chipper or something like that, and that was like a big...
Guaranteed someone is going to comment
and be like, you were at this match on this day.
Yeah, exactly. On our episode, and be like, oh, yes, actually, that was Monday night.
I'm sure.
That was Monday Night Raw, episode whatever, on this date. And yes, that was definitely in Nashville and blah, blah. Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, but I have that distinct memory because I just remember being in... I didn't realize there was so much storytelling that happened in wrestling. I didn't understand that.
Are you kidding? It's all storytelling.
Well, right. But then before, I didn't realize that. And so I was, I was pretty taken aback by how much...
Yeah.
I was like, what? Why do dudes care about why is there so much about like people being in relationships
you
and
go to
stuff?
one wrestling match and you're like,
my whole
get it.
My whole view of men completely changed after I watched it.
Yeah.
I was like, why do they care about this stuff? But they did.
So back to the movie. Boobs.
Boobs.
We've got Cassidy here, played by Cassidy or Pam. I'm probably going to go back and forth between Cassidy is her stripper name, Pam is her real name. Played wonderfully by Marissa Tomei. She was nominated for an Oscar for this performance. She's experiencing much of what Randy is in this movie. She, as of course, David said in his voicemail. She's feeling like she's aged out of her field and she's not wanted anymore. We're introduced to her in a scene where there are guys that she mistakenly walked into a VIP room with, and they said, oh no, we wanted another stripper, we wanted another girl, you could be our mom or something along those lines. And Randy walks in and kind of scares him off. But yeah, I think this scene also kind of illustrates why Randy and how Randy is how he is financially. He gets paid by going to these wrestling matches and working what little he does at the grocery store, stocking shelves and whatnot. And then he spends it at the strip club, even when he's been kicked out of his home. He's been kicked out of his home at this point.
Oh, right. His financial situation, I am completely shocked by his financial situation, where he can have these kind of muscles and be as poor as he is. I mean, I just think about how expensive the gym membership is going to be at the Y after we stop getting it free from your work, right? And I'm like, and for people who are able to afford to go to gyms and go to them as frequently as he does to be able to keep in shape like this. Because even when you're on steroids, I was doing some research on steroids, even when you're on steroids, to really get the effect, you have to be working out too.
Oh yeah.
So
it's not a magic pill where you just take it and get buff.
And we see him purchase his steroids and it's like $1,000.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, he's paying $60 for this lap dance. He's paying for drinks at this place, all while he owes money to his landlord.
Right. And then we're going to see him do the steroids, and then him going to get his hair done and get it professionally dyed, and him doing tanning at the tanning bed. Like, all of the things he does, the reason he lives in a trailer, he's probably making okay money doing the wrestling, but it's that it costs so much to keep up all of this.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's the thing. I feel like this movie really kind of brilliantly structured this so that we can see him, we can make a judgment call on him. It's the movie's kind of constantly forcing the audience to put these characters in boxes, or to try to at least. And even when you started this movie, you said you expected him to be a dirtbag, and he's not a dirtbag. He is a genuine, nice guy who means well, but does fuck up because we all do.
Right, and even though there are cues that the movie keeps giving about him where it's like he's a dirtbag, right? He's a dirtbag. Look at all the drugs he's buying right now. Look at all these steroids. He's cheating to get these muscles, right? He's a dirtbag. Look, he's got a poster of boobs behind his towel in his bathroom, and he goes to a strip club all the time.
Exactly.
And et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But he's not. He's not a dirtbag.
We've got this series of scenes, starting with this one right here, in which he's buying, workout supplements and drugs, illegal drugs, from a guy who's also offering him things like, Coke. And he's going to go and get hair treatment. He's going to get tanned. He's going to go to the store and buy props. All of these things cost money. And the rest of that money that we see, the first thing we see him spend money on is a stripper, a lap dance, and drinks, things that he doesn't need. But that is so negligible compared to what he's spending on what is ultimately his art. He is spending the brunt of his money on his art. He is the picture, and like I said before, we were going to get into this, he is the picture of a starving artist.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So he spends all of this money on his art, which, can you really blame him? Of course, you can criticize him for taking drugs and all this kind of stuff, but can you really criticize him for spending this money on his passion?
But can you really criticize him for taking drugs and stuff?
I guess not. I mean, can you really criticize Barry Bonds for taking steroids when like literally everyone in the MLB was taking steroids?
But I'm not even talking about it from that perspective. I'm talking about it from the perspective of, so take any famous artist who famously, whether we're talking paintings or we're talking writers or whatever, any famous artist who famously did a lot of drugs and that was their inspiration for their art. Do we criticize them for that?
No, we don't.
We don't typically.
So should we criticize this guy for doing exactly that? And then once you're forced to look back at what negligible amount of money he spent on having, just a good time one night, can you really criticize him for that either? It's just like, well, he's spending all this money on his art, so he spends a little bit more so he can enjoy himself. Does he deserve that much? Of course he does. And I think it's kind of brilliant that the movie forces us to try to put these characters into boxes and then immediately challenges our perception that we've decided, who these people are and what they're doing.
And exactly in terms of, him. I think for her character, it's a little bit more on the nose than I expected it. The stripper who's actually a mom who's just trying to get her kids.
It's an archetype. The stripper
actually a single mom.
Right, the stripper with a heart of gold.
Right, yeah. That's a little bit, done, I think. And so it's pretty easy to guess that character. But with him, this wasn't a character that I guessed. This wasn't a character that I came in here and, the wrestler with a heart of gold, right?
Right.
The spent wrestler with a heart of gold.
I want to jump back to the lap dance scene because there's some stuff in there I want to talk about. He starts going through the scars on his body. She says something, and I'm glad that this movie does address it, and they just do it for a moment. She says something about wrestling being fake, and like, they say it's fake, and he's like, you fake, I'll show you fake. And he starts pointing out his scars, Yeah. So we start the movie and we see that he's voluntarily surrounding himself by pieces of his own history,
right? Kind
of creating this prison for himself that is the past. It's a prison of nostalgia almost, which I do think this movie has something to say about nostalgia. But he's not just surrounding himself with his own history. He wears it on the scars on his body. He can't escape it. It's a part of his. It's actually a part of his body. And that's something that he has to carry with him. So even if he got rid of all of the stuff, if he got rid of, the pictures on the wall of the van and the action figure, and he stopped wrestling, and he got rid of the Dodge Ram truck, which is
right.
The guy's name is Randy the Ram Robinson, and he drives a Dodge Ram.
Right. Yeah. Of course.
That was obviously by choice. But that he's not going to be able to get rid of all of it because he actually carries scars on his body.
So this is getting a little less serious and a little more silly here, but just talking about real injuries in wrestling, because and this is certainly a time to talk about it during this hardcore match that he's about to do. Real injuries in wrestling, like I watched just a compilation video and it's awful. the shit that has happened to people, fracturing vertebrae in your spine and all that kind of
yeah.
stuff. But
People have died.
some of the famous ones, like Steve Austin breaking his neck, was one that I
Yep.
watched. And then the one that really was terrible was Sid Vicious when he broke his leg. Have you seen that video?
I have not seen that.
Oh my God. If you want to be really uncomfortable for like 20 seconds, then just watch him, because he jumps from the thing and he jumps down. And his leg just bends 90 degrees. And,
Yeah.
and I'm talking about like between like his tibia, fibula, like that area, and it just wobbles, it just flails in the air. It's so awful.
That's terrible. I think
So-
I saw a basketball player that happened to a couple of years ago, and that was equally terrible.
Yeah. So right, it's fake, but right, they're really getting hurt too. And then this one, I wanted to talk about this stuff. These kind of matches where this hardcore kind of stuff. I mean, this shit is insane, right?
Oh yeah, the hardcore
And
matches.
it's for real too. Like I assumed it was for real, but I had to go on the internet and make sure. And of course it is for real, where people are doing things like stapling each other and bashing each other with glass windows. And I love how this scene
Well, you want
cut.
to talk about people? Oh, I do too. You want to talk about people getting hurt? Talk about like Owen Hart, who died in the ring after falling, from the ceiling, making an entrance. It was pretty terrible. But yeah, I do really like how this scene is cut. We're kind of getting a cutting back and forth between the match itself and then the aftermath of the match, where they're getting patched up. So we see them getting patched up for something that happened in the ring, and then we immediately flash back to what that thing was.
That happened in the ring. Right. Yeah. We're seeing, like right here, we're seeing him take the $5 bill off of his face, which was stapled there. And then we see him staple. It's just a nice way to go back and forth doing this. This guy's got a lot of teeth missing, doesn't he?
Oh yeah, almost definitely. This is a Necro Butcher. He's a Combat Zone wrestling wrestler.
Oh, we're talking a real wrestler here?
Real dude. Yeah, this actually.
So are they really doing this stuff in this scene then? Are they doing some of the stapling and stuff for real?
Some of it, I'm sure they are, yeah. But yeah, this match was actually on February 9th, 2008, and it was part of Combat Zone Wrestling's regular February event. And it took place at the New Alhambra Arena for this movie, where they shot it. And it actually included a lot of Combat Zone alumni, along with the guy that he's wrestling right here, Necro Butcher. And the crowd actually calls him Necro. They call him by his actual wrestling name. So I do love how Necro keeps referring to Ram as Sir. He's very, very polite when they're talking. They're talking before the match, and when he thanks him after the match, he's very, very cordial, very polite, and it is sure to say Sir. This moment right here, where a guy in the crowd gives Ram his prosthetic leg to use,
right, to beat Necro with,
is based on an actual event from an ECW show where that happened. He gave it to a wrestler by the name of Tommy Dreamer in that match.
Isn't that? Don't they do something like that in Guardians of the Galaxy?
Oh, do they?
With a prosthetic leg, right?
Oh, Rocket Raccoon
tells him to go get it,
Yeah,
and
tells him to get
it's
out.
unnecessary.
Yeah.
Because he's a dick.
But
Yeah,
the thing that I really love about this scene, as both of us are lovers of good body horror, this is body horror.
Oh yeah,
and I love
absolutely.
it. But what he's doing in this hardcore match against Butcher, with the the barbed wire and the glass and the staple gun and just all the blood and terrible shit that he's putting his body through. It's really a microcosm, I think, for the long-term damage he's endured throughout his entire career. It's kind of like his career is the long play body horror, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like Jeff Goldblum turning into The Fly over the course of 20 years or something like that, as opposed to
I love the way this guy looks, too, this Necro guy. I mean, he just looks like someone who does this shit all the time.
Oh, yeah, for fun.
Right?
Not even for money. He's just like, this is fun to me.
And
like,
speaking of
he's
that...
He's not in shape. He's
right, yeah.
He's like a dude. He's just a dude, but he's actually a wrestler.
Well,
apparently.
and he said something about that at the beginning, too. He's like, I know I don't look like much, but I can take it, or something like that.
Yeah.
But speaking of that on a different level, I feel like, I mean, I'm sure we're going to touch on it to some degree, but there is a community of people out there in the gay community where it's like a subgroup of this, where it's specifically like BDSM gay guys who the whole thing is getting together and wrestling each other for sexual pleasure, and also beating each other up, for sexual pleasure.
Well, I think that you're definitely onto something there. If I think that pro wrestling is inherently homoerotic. Mm-hmm. You're talking about big, beefy, sweaty dudes at the peak of human athletic perfection, mm-hmm. at the height of human performance, grabbing onto each other and writhing around and sweating.
Being in skin-tight outfits.
I mean, and in some cases, really swapping bodily fluids and
getting those balls up in each other's faces and stuff when they do the leg scissor things.
There is something kind of latently homoerotic about pro wrestling, on the same level that someone might say that there's a sexual element to dancing.
Right.
Dancing
absolutely.
with a partner. And, mm-hmm. depending on the dance style, you can see more of that, with salsa or tango or lambada or something that's especially sexual, that really kind of becomes apparent. But, dancing is two bodies, dancing with a partner is two bodies.
At least two bodies.
Moving together in close proximity rhythmically.
Right.
What does that sound like? Often
in very tight clothing.
Yes.
Or revealing clothing.
Yeah, sometimes.
Where there's a lot of skin contact.
Of course, you can dig even deeper, into a more primal place and talk about like mating dances and things like that, and take it to a more animalistic place. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think that when you think about it in those terms, you can't avoid the comparison of any kind of sport that has two people in really close contact,
right?
That there is some sexuality to it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So yes, with pro wrestling, I think that there is some latent homoeroticism there.
Right. And then what I'm saying then is when you get into this hardcore stuff where the goal is to cause pain, right? Like that these guys, like you made the comment, I think this guy actually likes it, or he might actually like it, right? Doing the stapling on himself and all that kind of stuff, right?
Right.
Because obviously that is a surprisingly, if you don't realize it, pretty large community in the world of people who do enjoy, doing that kind of stuff.
I didn't mean latent homoeroticism. I meant inherent. Yeah, that's what I meant. That's the word I wanted.
And so what I'm saying then is that I just don't think that the line is that I think it could be pretty easy to cross over those two things, or perhaps to not know, which reason the person is actually in it for, right?
Right.
Like it's just interesting to me because it's such a masculine, like on the surface, it comes across as this completely like, I'm a tough guy. I can staple my face.
Well, speaking of the bodily punishment, there is a parallel drawn by the Cassidy character in the lap dance scene between Randy and Christ, as in Jesus Christ. Do you think that holds water? I have a theory about it.
Well, and there are a couple other references just throwing them out there in the movie, like Judas the traitor is one of the names of the people that he wrestles that's wrestling at the same time as him. I don't know. I guess so. What's your theory? You go ahead.
Well, her quote, she quotes the Bible. She says, "He was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us to peace was upon him, and by his wounds we were healed." And that parallel that she makes between Ram and Christ, I think, is unearned, but the incongruity is intentional. I think that she says that because she's, the writing there, it's forcing the audience to draw the comparison, to see the contrast, and to not say, oh yeah, he is like Christ, but to say, let me think about that. Wait, no, he's not like Christ. Christ's sacrifice was selfless. Ram and his motivations are entirely self-serving.
Right.
And we see that fleshed out throughout the movie, to see kind of the lives that have been thrown to the wayside, specifically his daughters. This shot right here of the taxi and the van was our hint, and no one got it.
Oh, wow.
So, of course, David Dassaw, who requested the film, recognized it and sent me a message. But yes, no one else recognized it.
What I was going to say is she makes a comment, though, about it being the Passion of the Christ from the movie.
From the movie.
And I'm pretty sure it's, I think it must be like a song that was on the credits or something like that, maybe. I don't know. There's definitely a music video out there of the Passion of the Christ.
Say what?
With
What?
with the band Third Day and a song called By His Wounds.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And I don't know if it's a fan-made video or what, but I didn't do that much research into it. But it looked pretty legit, so maybe...
I don't know. Oh, Jesus.
Literally. But
literal
the things
Jesus.
she says, like, they're the lyrics from the song, too. So
Ram has had a heart attack at this point. He's back home. I love the image of him wearing that hearing aid. That hearing aid is something that's always stuck with me about this movie. It's like this guy that looks like this with the bleach blonde
And the
long hair, and he's
glasses.
ripped, and he walks. He wears like hoodies and jackets and jeans with glasses and a hearing aid because he's just so jacked up.
Well, the thing, though, to me is that we don't really see this like this until after the bypass surgery. So he has the
Right.
bypass surgery, and it's the first time we hear his real name.
Robin Remzinski.
Right. And you're like... And he even, rejects it, and he's like, "Oh no, don't call me that." Right?
Right. Watch this zoom that happens here on his chest scar. That's documentary as fuck.
Oh yeah, definitely. But he's like, don't call me that, don't call me that, and I think he tries to get him to call him Randy. Maybe is that the name that he tries to get people to call him? When
That's his. Yeah,
when
that's
he's
his.
not being called the Ram.
That's his wrestling name. But he wants people to call him that all the time. He not only does he have a wrestling name, which is the Ram, but he also has a pseudonym, which is Randy Robinson, when his real name is Robin Remzinski.
and
So it goes like two
I
layers
wish I knew
deep.
what book this was. I can't tell. I tried and I can't tell. But the font on the front looks like a romance
It
novel
does
font.
kind of. Look, it's an NES.
But what I was going to say though is
I
that
do want to talk about the game they play here in a minute.
and we will, is that it's like in that moment when he first gets called his real name in the movie and he wakes up from this bypass surgery, it's like reality.
Yeah.
Reality is trying to encroach on his world that he's living in. And we see it in all these different representations where we see it in him having the hearing aid in, we see him filling out paperwork with his glasses on, we see him in very normal clothing, and then we see him go back inside the trailer where he lives for the first time.
Yep.
So
Yep. I'll tell you what's real is Mickey Rourke's ass. I feel like we almost get equal Mickey Rourke's ass and Marissa Tomei's tits in this movie, which is totally fine with not equality. Just
Right.
That's fine with me.
yeah.
Okay. Just so we're square on that. Just want to make sure that we're square on that. The video game that they're playing right now, Randy has invited a local youngster over to play NES, which they play the fictional game Wrestle Jam. And it was actually created especially for this film because it has his character, Randy the Ram Robinson, and his arch nemesis, the Ayatollah, which we haven't talked about. The Ayatollah, we will talk about him, but he has committed to having a rematch with the Ayatollah because apparently it was a great big event years ago, and there's never been a proper rematch. So
Isn't the
trying to
Ayatollah
set that up.
am I wrong for assuming that he's modeled after the Iron Sheik? Is that
No,
what
that's-
that's supposed to be?
That's correct. Of course, the Ayatollah being a very high ranked individual in the Muslim faith, but the yes, very as much as Randy himself is modeled after kind of an amalgamation of a couple of different people.
I'm sorry, in just a second here. I love this moment where he just barely jogs and then he has to go down on a knee
Yeah,
and
it
sit
sucks.
down all the way.
It sucks.
Yeah.
But yeah, he in as much as Randy is kind of an amalgamation of like Hulk Hogan and maybe Macho Man, Randy Savage. His special move, Ram Jam, is a lot like Macho Man's finishing move, which is like the flying elbow or something like that, or something. So yeah, in as much as he is an amalgamation of those, I think that the Ayatollah is definitely supposed to mirror the Iron Sheik, and of course, the rivalry that Hulk Hogan had with the Iron Sheik throughout the 80s and into the early 90s is what kind of made him the face of wrestling for a good long while. That certainly helped. But yeah, I think that they're definitely drawing that comparison, certainly.
I'm wondering how he's paying for his hospital bills and the medicine for his hospital visit.
Who knows? Did I finish talking about Wrestle Jam? I didn't. So they play the fictional game Wrestle Jam, which features, his characters. Looks perfect. It looks great. It looks like an NES game. It actually features really similar graphics to the WWF WrestleMania game for NES that came out in 1989. But yeah, that scene, every scene kind of drives this point home. And again, like it almost gets to the point of being too on the nose, but every scene drives home the point, you're too old for this. Get out of the game, old man. You're irrelevant, right? And in that scene, he's talking to this kid who he's invited over to play this game. And there's no way around feeling like his successes are all in the past. Kids today, the kid he invites over, has better video games. He's talking about Call of Duty 4 or some shit while he's playing this video game and talking about how old the game that Randy's in is. And that's probably the only game that Randy owns, probably the only game that he was ever in. He's got one action figure that was made out of him. All of these things are long in the past, and people have moved on. So yeah, now he's feeling like, I guess this is the scene where he mentions his daughter, Stephanie, because he's told Cassidy that he's had a heart attack. He's trying to tell everyone he has a heart attack, and I guess it's because that's just a thing that you do. What is that? What is that instinct? When something bad happens to you, you have to tell people. Is it to get sympathy, or is it because, hey, in case something happens to me, this is what's happening to me now, so you know?
But I think in his case, it's that he doesn't have anybody. And he's just searching for he says it himself that in this scene, he says, I don't want to be alone.
Exactly.
He doesn't have anybody, and he's just searching for somebody that he can say, look, it's serious now. Like, it's serious in my life that I'm alone now.
The nature of Randy and Cassidy's relationship still feels very one-sided at this point in the movie.
Oh, yeah.
The first scene that we see of Cassidy, they obviously know each other very well. And you question to the extent that their relationship has gone at this point. But in this second scene that they share...
Well, I love the moment where they're having the conversation while she's, giving him a lap dance and stuff.
Right, like how old hat that is to him, right? But at the end of that conversation, he still pays for that lap dance. At no point in this movie does she offer him free services ever.
Yeah.
Right? And with this second scene that they share, it's certain that he's a regular, but he's still a customer. In her words, I can't leave with a customer. And he doesn't see her outside the strip club, which really speaks volumes about the real nature of their relationship at this point.
Right.
Right.
But I think that's also that just like he's in denial, she's in denial.
I love all the phone numbers crossed out on the back
of the picture of his daughter that's like from middle school or something.
Yeah, years and years ago.
But anyways, though, just like he is in denial of the fact that he is too old to be in this profession, she's in denial of it too. And I don't necessarily think it's quite the same thing. This is just my personal opinion about this. But I feel like wrestling it's a sport. And in being a sport, it, has a physical strain on the human body, which at a certain age becomes dangerous.
If cheerleading's a sport, pro wrestling's a sport.
Right. But what I'm saying is that at a certain age, it becomes dangerous to wrestle. Obviously, he's showing that obviously it's become dangerous for him to do these things.
Right.
Stripping doesn't become dangerous for you to do as you get older.
No, but the parallel that they're drawing, and I think is a valid one.
I get it's a valid parallel, but I don't necessarily... we're supposed to immediately make the... And there, I'm on both sides of this because I understand that in the general public's eye, right, they're not going to make any money doing what they're doing anymore. It is not a legitimate profession for them to be in after a certain age. However, I think that's the idea of a woman not being sexually attractive anymore once she hits a certain age is a problem with society. That's a problem that we have as a society right now.
Absolutely.
Whereas not being able to wrestle when you hit a certain age is not a problem with the society. That's a thing about the human body.
Well, exactly. But I think that this film, rightly so, works within those social constructs that are already created and doesn't attempt to challenge them. It's working within those boundaries.
I'm just saying that they're both supposed to be in denial about the fact that they're too old to do what they're doing. But there's a part of me that says he's in denial and that's a problem. But there's the part of me that says she's in denial about what she's doing. I'm kind of like, yeah, but that's shitty. If she wants to still strip when she's fucking 40 or 50 or 60 or however old, then fucking do it, babe.
Marissa Tomei was 44 when she made this.
And she's hotter than I'll ever be.
She has the body
and have ever been.
I said last night when we were watching this and taking notes, I was like, she has the body of a 20-year-old. And you were like, no, she has the body of a good-looking 20-year-old.
Right, a good-looking, no body fat, perfectly in shape. Boobs are looking pretty fantastic.
Incredible. Yeah, no kidding. I think that it's not entirely like it's not
and she's had babies,
right? So
what is this imaginary world that we live in where you get are there steroids for just being hot? Is it plastic surgery? Like what
plastic surgery?
I mean, because
it's called money. You just inject money directly into your body. It isn't exactly a 1-to-1 because you can look at the toll that this life has taken on him physically, and it may very well, and that's kind of the ambiguous ending of this movie, it may very well have taken his life by the time this movie's over.
Right, and I think it does.
I think it does too. Intentionally left up to the audience, but I think you're kind of right that there isn't exactly a 1-to-1 parallel because she does have the option to get out. Or she has the option to stay in. He doesn't really have that option. Like if he stays in, he's going to die, which I think he does.
And also, and I still think this is legit. I think that again, that an older woman stripping is not outside the realm of possibility of specific things that certain men ask for and want.
Right.
You know, I don't think that it's, I mean, she is a very good looking woman.
But who wants old wrestlers?
Right. And only because of the fact that he is not able to physically do the things that he could do before because it's dangerous for him. But for her, she's going to be able to continue stripping. Like that's not going to, as long as her body's still in the shape that it's in, like, I mean, whatever. Anyways, I'm just saying there are a lot of old people pornos out there. So
they do exist. That's for sure. We missed the first shot of the first scene with Stephanie, his daughter, played by Evan Rachel Wood, who was cast last minute. Apparently, she was kind of a replacement. But yeah, she doesn't want anything to do with him because he never took care of her. He was too busy with his career and probably did the same, kind of ignored her just like, he ignored her mother most likely.
I love that they don't resolve their storyline in this movie.
No. The resolution is he fucks up.
And you think he's going to resolve it.
And he doesn't deserve her. And the movie's right to do that. Not all stories have happy endings, and this one certainly doesn't, but it plays it kind of like a happy ending, but we'll talk about it when we get there. It's interesting. So I've been to enough conventions and various meet and greets through the years to see really sad scenes like the one we just saw with has-beens who are sitting there selling
yeah.
I mean, they don't even have DVDs. They've got VHS tapes in 2008 of, I guess, highlights or something of their career. Mm-hmm. Not that I don't appreciate a good VHS. But I think it's interesting. Ram looks around that room in the community center and sees the products of all of the choices of his contemporaries, much like the choices that he's made. The one that really stands out is the cane. There's a cane leaning against, one of the tables.
For me, the one that stands out is the guy who's asleep on the table next to him. And it seems like the older version of where he's going to be in the future. But the thing is here is that he starts in this scene right here, things start to get better, right? And you start as the viewer to see where his life could actually go. And you start saying to yourself, oh God, yeah.
He can get it together. Yeah.
If he just had a job, if he just works at that deli and just works 40, 50 hours a week at that stupid deli, you know, in a couple of years, they're going to promote him. He's going to make a little more money. At some point, they could be renting a house instead of renting a trailer.
Right.
Like, and you start to see him having a life where, you know, he's able to pay his bills. He's off the drugs. He's not wrestling anymore, but, you know, he's got a girl he likes. He's got a relationship with his daughter. And, of course, the end of this movie is that that's not what he wants.
Right. No, well, he squanders it, and it's just too easy for him to go back to
the thing that makes him feel good and makes him feel good now.
It may be fleeting, it may be instant gratification, but that's how he's lived his life. He's lived his life on those little moments, and he will die by those little moments.
Right. And as the audience, we want to see him. We want to see him struggle up into this.
We want to see him be better than that.
Right. We want to see him be okay with living out a life where you work at the grocery deli where your boss treats you like shit and stuff, because he makes a good job out of it. Like he ends
up being good at it.
Right. And there's this part of us that's like, oh no, you can do that. But let's be real. Let's think about that life. Because I've worked at a fucking deli just like the one that he works at. Exactly like the one that he worked at. And I worked there. I worked my ass off there during the summers in college. And it's fucking horrible, right? And I remember going to work every day, and I'd work like 40, 50 hours a week. And I just remember sitting in that break room and looking at the people around me and thinking, fuck, I have to graduate college. Like I know where this life leads, and I know how easy it is to just get sucked into doing something like this. The paycheck comes in every week, you know? There's always work. Yeah. And your raise goes up, and it goes up, and it goes up a little and a little and a little, and you see that being a life. And I just so it's like, do I want that for him?
Sorry, this scene right here where his manager is watching porn on his office computer. So weird.
It is
such
so
a weird moment, but
and doesn't react that big about it.
No, he doesn't. And then like when he makes him go back outside to knock again, and he just comes storming out. It colors this character in such an interesting, weird way, but like I feel like it makes him really memorable. He's almost like a Coen Brothers character. Mm-hmm. He kind of gives off that vibe. Anyway, but yeah, he's constantly ridiculing Randy for being a wrestler.
But what I was saying though is that we're wishing on him a life of, let's be real, poverty. It's still poverty.
Right.
And a life where, you know, his highlights are going to visit his daughter occasionally, maybe having dinner with his girlfriend on the couch with a beer and watching TV or something like that. Those are the happy times of his life.
It's a simple life, but yeah.
And we're wishing that he would just suck it up and do that when he has a life that he has fans, that people cheer for him. Mm-hmm. That it's exciting and invigorating and makes him feel like a hero, like a superhero. And so, you know, it's really selfish of us as the viewers to want that for him. Right?
Yeah.
And let him slowly die in his poverty and in his medical bills.
Right, exactly. But it's our version of success for him.
Right.
It's the audience's version of success for him. And the more that you want it for him, the harder it is to take that he doesn't end up making that choice, that all it takes is one bad choice that leads to him losing all of this that he's built up in what is ultimately a pretty short amount of time, for him to just go back and kind of kill himself. I mean, in a way, kill himself, but he dies doing what he loves. And that, again, is that a sad ending? It is, but is it?
Right.
So, and again, we'll talk about that when we get there. So he goes out and he meets Pam at a vintage shop so he can buy something for his daughter at her request, or at her suggestion, rather. And they go out, and the first thing he says to her is, "You look clean."
Yep.
Yikes. Not a way to start what kind of turns into a date. It's definitely a date in his mind, right? But we find out that Cassidy's real name is Pam, and she prefers this when she's not working. Of course, we find out that Randy's real name is Robin, which he never prefers, and that's a really key difference in how they carry their professional identities. Pam works as a stripper. Randy is a wrestler.
Right, absolutely.
And
Those name cues are big in this movie.
And the delineation is key. It's about how these people carry their identities with them. And it makes perfect sense that when she doesn't want to be a stripper forever. And she wants to get out of it, and she wants to have a better life for her son, and she wants to move to a better area. And Randy doesn't know how to do any of that. He just knows how to struggle and still be a wrestler, because that's all he knows. He is a wrestler. She just works as a stripper.
But again, we see him seeing goals in his life and looking like he's going to strive toward them.
Sure.
Because let's be real, he loves his daughter. He loves her deeply, and I think he does try to forget about her, and I think he actually successfully is able to forget about her, and that's why he's able to continue living selfishly like he does. But once he remembers her, once he has the understanding that, you know, she is something he could have back in his life,
right,
that is a huge motivation, as well as Pam, to try and live a more normal life working at the deli.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, well, exactly. But I feel like he's forced into that. The heart attack makes him, it forces him into that.
Of course.
I don't think he'd ever consider that without the doctor saying, you're going to die. Like, it has to be his mortality that's on the line.
Right.
Before he actually makes a move. And I think that that's key. And this is something that I came up with that I thought would have been really interesting. He doesn't really have a problem tracking down his daughter at all. He has that picture of her from like middle school with all those numbers written on it. I thought it would have been a nice, neat little touch, you know, going on the theme of identities and names and pseudonyms. If Ram had had a harder time tracking down Stephanie because she changed her name to avoid him.
to avoid having his name, perhaps even.
Right, to avoid having his name. That could be a reason. To avoid having him track her down. You know, any of those reasons. Think how perfectly that would have played into Randy and Pam's name changes on a, you know, that subtextual level of identity.
Going back to his daughter, two things I wanted to mention. One, the girl that she lives with, and I don't know if we are supposed to believe that she's a lesbian or not. I assumed that since I feel like we got enough clues and him suggesting it, that's what we're supposed to assume. But so her partner is wearing a Wild Horse Saloon shirt when she opens the door the first time, right? Mm-hmm. Which
Nashville represent.
A haunt for us. My father actually, he's a DJ, and he actually used to broadcast from inside the Wild Horse Saloon for many years, actually. So I spent many evenings in childhood down there.
So they just got done singing along to the song Round and Round by Rat with 2 T's. And I don't know if this was intentional, but they stopped singing right before the line, "Our love will find a way, just give it time."
Oh, probably. That seems intentional for this movie. Another thing, his daughter says, "You want me to take care of you?" Yes, well, I'm not going to do that. Where the fuck were you when I needed you to take care of me? Do you think it's still selfish? Do you think she's right and that he actually does want her to take care of him? I mean, it's still selfish either way because he wants her in his life.
No, because that's not why he reaches out to her.
But is it, though? Is what I'm saying.
I don't think so. He reaches out to her because Pam suggests it. I mean, that's what ends up happening is he tells Pam, and Pam in a way kind of diverts that responsibility of being like, because she knows, Pam realizes she has to, that she is the only person that he has.
Yeah.
And that's what forces her to say, "Don't you have family?" And then he's like, "Well, I have a daughter that doesn't like me very much." And Pam is like, "Well, you've had a heart attack. Now's the time to reach out to her."
Yeah.
And it you know, convinces him to reach out to her. I feel like he's getting in touch with Stephanie for the same reason that he told Pam he has a heart attack, is because he doesn't have anybody else. So when Pam suggested, he's like, "Okay, all right, throw caution to the wind," and that's what he does. So I think that he's really, I feel like it really is altruistic. Like he's trying to patch back together and put put the pieces back together of, lives that he's ruined or parts of his life that he didn't get right.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel that selfish. I feel like the most selfish thing about Randy as a character is his predilection to steer back toward wrestling, to steer back toward that self-destructive life.
I love this right here.
Oh, it's amazing.
Where
Him walking through the back of the grocery store,
where you hear the cheering and stuff from the ring as though he is walking down to a match. And then, he goes through the curtains and the sound cuts off immediately.
it's like it makes you feel like he's this moment for him, because he doesn't like to work with people. The thing that he's scared of most is being recognized. Mm-hmm. So that's why he likes to work in the back of the store. So,
and why? Why does he not like being recognized?
Because
to keep up the illusion that this character is still alive and still out there.
That he's not a failure, that he is just a wrestler and nothing else.
And that people can assume that, that guy just wrestled till he died. That's all he did. He never took a job at as a car salesman like his rival does.
So, when he asks for more hours, he has to weigh the options. He has to weigh his options between, okay, I can either face my public, so to speak, or I can continue working this shit job where I don't make enough money. And he wants to try to set things right, so he's willing to take that chance and make that sacrifice. And he goes out and he starts working and kind of gets used to it, ends up being pretty good at it. And I think that
gets a little overzealous, but
sure. Well, he's a pro wrestler.
But it's kind of a cool scene where he's the way he's talking to the customers and he's playing the crowd. He plays the crowd at the deli.
Exactly. Like he is facing his public. That the sound of the crowd as, building up as he's moving through the back of the store, like he's about to go out into a wrestling match. He's building up those same kind of nerves. He's like, I'm about to walk out into a room of people who know who I am. Mm-hmm. And when he does, the crowd stops because these people don't know who he is. That's his fear subsiding at that point, or starting to subside, and then he starts to work. He ends up being good at it. And then after he's been doing this for a while, by the way, all of this, or a lot of this, I think, was improvised when they were shooting this inside a real grocery store at a real deli counter.
Yeah, it looks like all of that.
The real customers kept walking up to the counter during filming, and Mickey Rourke started taking their orders, and the camera would just keep rolling. And yeah. This is one sequence that was heavily improvised, like the locker room scenes.
This scene he is not using proper slicer technique there.
Oh, okay.
No. You're saying, oh, okay, but I'm talking about the big handle thing that's dangling down is what you put on top of the meat so that you don't slice your fingers off while you're doing it, and he's just slicing while holding the meat or the cheese, right? It's like, I'm not talking about like, you've got to get the right angle on the slice. I'm talking about whether or not you chop off your fingers. And it's really scary every time I watch him doing it, because I'm just like, oh my God, no, what are you doing? Oh my God, you're going to slice off your fingers. And of course, eventually he does get hurt. So
I knew a guy that worked at a juice bar or something, and he was juicing wheatgrass, and he accidentally stuffed his finger down past the blade as it was on. And it's like this big, heavy stainless steel machine. And it cut into his finger and caught, and he tried to pull his finger out of it, and it picked up the heavy machine. It was caught so bad. Oh my God. It was pretty rough.
But yeah, I mean, everything about that deli, this was like nostalgia city going back and watching this, because it's been, oh God, like almost 10 years since I worked in the deli. They definitely serve boar's head there. I could tell by the condiments on the counter.
Boar's head's very good.
Boar's head is the superior deli meat.
Is it?
And
do you think it's the superior? So it's the superior one at like Publix or something, but is it superior at like Whole Foods? Do you think there's a better one at Whole Foods?
A better one than boar's head? I don't know. I have never tried a deli meat that's better than boar's head.
I'm sure someone will comment.
I would be shocked to find a better deli meat or cheese.
But yeah, so we see him in what's kind of a little montage of him getting better and better at the deli job, and like you said, being a little overzealous. But again, he's a pro wrestler. That's kind of his job. All it takes is for him to feel like he's good at one other thing in his life, in this case, the deli. And that makes him feel okay leaving wrestling behind. The very next scene is him calling his promoter and saying,
Yep.
I'm not doing the Ayatollah match. I'm done. I'm retired. That's
and
it.
That's part of what it makes this movie hard, because I've said that it's selfish of us as the viewers to want him to have a different life and to lead the life where he still lives in poverty in reality, still can probably not pay his bills working at a fucking deli, but lives a life that we say is normal and that we say is gonna make him happier. That's why this is difficult, because all of this right here makes you feel like maybe you're not selfish. Like maybe it really is what he wants to be with his daughter and have her love him, and to work a job and stuff that is not so hard on his body.
Right. Yep. I do think that the casting in this movie, especially the roles of Randy and Cassidy, or Randy and Pam, is pretty perfect. I feel like that there are as I understand it, Darren Aronofsky always intended for Mickey Rourke to play this part. He didn't know if he was going to be able to play the part because Mickey Rourke has kind of a history with substance abuse and
I
being,
didn't know that,
and being difficult to work with, and kind of not being the easiest person to deal with professionally. So there was a time when Nicolas Cage was researching the role. He was going to probably be in it.
So it could be either fantastic or horrible, right?
Well, that's true. That is such is the nature of Nicolas Cage. I think Sylvester Stallone was even considered.
I can
at
totally
one point.
see that.
Oh yeah, for sure. I feel like Sylvester Stallone though would. It wouldn't be quite as perfect as Mickey Rourke is in this role, because I feel like Mickey Rourke's career more or less parallels that of Randy's career, where, he was this, hot item back in the, late 80s and early 90s. And, his own self-destructive behaviors kind of kept him away from projects and kept him away from staying in the spotlight, staying in the limelight for all those years. And it was kind of because of this movie, which is it ironic? Is that what that is? Because of this movie about a guy who's irrelevant, it made Mickey Rourke relevant again.
Right.
He was nominated for an Oscar for this performance.
Well deserved, because especially this scene right here. I mean,
this scene right here where he's crying to his daughter, talking about how he fucked up. He's saying he was the one who was supposed to take care of her and their family, and he's the one that was being selfish. And I mean, this is the Oscar clip right here. And it's not that Sean Penn was not good in Milk, but I think I still feel like Mickey Rourke was robbed at the Oscars this year. But yeah, he's an incredible subtle performance that really, I feel like, parallels his life. And I feel like Marissa Tomei is kind of on the same wavelength, where she was a hot actress years ago. And it's not that she ever stopped being physically attractive. She never stopped being physically attractive. But ageism in Hollywood, which is rampant, is real. And it kept her from getting parts as she got older, which is a problem that, every actress faces.
Right. And less so for actors.
And again, just like Mickey Rourke, this movie made her relevant again. And I think it's wonderful that this movie was able to do that. But I think that there is an irony there that a movie starring two actors who kind of strayed from the limelight for various reasons, kind of got brought back into it about a movie about people
that's happening
to people who are aging out of their fields.
What was I going to say? Oh, I was going to say, okay, I don't think he could have carried it like Mickey Rourke did, but wouldn't it have been kind of weird to see Arnold in this role, right? Like as a wrestler, right?
Hulk Hogan went on the Howard Stern show and said that he turned down the role, like he was approached with the role and he turned it down. And Darren Aronofsky was publicly said, no, that's bullshit. No, we were never talking to Hulk Hogan.
That's the same kind of thing, right? Where obviously he couldn't have carried it the way Mickey Rourke has carried it. But it would be kind of cool, right?
Yeah.
'Cause-
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Because of the history. So,
Yeah, definitely.
but I mean, Arnold's going to be relevant till the day he dies. So
Well, he's
I don't think he's ever experienced irrelevancy,
still making action movies
except
and
maybe
Terminator
like
movies.
before.
This scene right here where they dance, it is
I feel this is one step too far.
exactly what I've got in my notes. It's after he breaks down and cries, and we get the Oscar clip,
Mm-hmm.
which is excellent, amazing performance in that scene.
There's one more beat that's great.
And them walking away and
Mm-hmm.
Stephanie taking his arm is the perfect capper for that scene.
And
He's
not
put it-
just the taking of the arm, but she leans into him.
Right. He spills his guts to her. You know, he pours out his heart right in front of her. And as they walk away, she accepts his apology. And that's enough. But instead, we've got a scene where they dance in an abandoned ballroom or something.
Yeah.
Which is like, yeah, it's sweet, but it was sweet enough already. And that's something that you don't expect from a movie called The Wrestler. This movie is really sweet.
Oh, yeah.
Very, very sweet, but not saccharine or melodramatic or anything
But
like that.
that moment, though, that moment where they dance in the ballroom is the moment that it verges on that, though. Because when she takes his arm and she leans into him in a way that I am very familiar with. I mean, I've done that with my father. I do that with you. It's just a very natural, like familiar, very
Show of affection, yeah.
very strong show of affection. Yeah. And when you see her do that, oh God, I just melt a little bit when in that moment. And then when they go into the ballroom and dance, I'm just kind of like, oh, that's a little too far.
Yeah.
I don't believe this. I can't envision myself who I have a very good relationship with my father. I can't envision myself going into a ballroom in some vacant place like that and being like, let's dance. Right. And so to envision being estranged from your father
And doing
that is a little odd to me. It's a little too far. So
I mean, all they would have had to do is show that moment there had some kind of
right, that there was
historical
something.
significance to them. Like maybe he took her to ballroom dancing classes one time. Or
Well,
something.
I thought that they were going to walk into the remnants of the monster house that they were talking about.
Oh,
the
yeah.
story they were telling was about the monster house and how they would go into it, and she would cling to him because she was so scared and she needed him, and so I thought perhaps that's what they were going to do.
Right. I want to talk about. We haven't talked about him at all. I want to talk about Aronofsky as a filmmaker. Are you familiar with Aronofsky's work at all?
I don't know. Tell me what else.
Okay, well, his first movie was a movie called Pi,
Nope.
stark black and white, shot on. I want to say it was shot on 8, but I think it was actually shot on 16, black and white 16 millimeter, very high contrast film. He made The Fountain,
Oh, I really want to see it, but I haven't ever watched it.
Requiem for a Dream.
I'm of course I know the song, but
I think you have seen Black Swan
yes, I've seen Black Swan.
and Noah.
Oh, I love Noah.
I love Noah too. People don't like that movie.
What?
It's really weird that this movie is made by the same guy who made those movies, because this is, like I said at the beginning of the movie, this is probably his rawest, most stripped down movie he's made since Pi. But even Pi is extremely high concept. This movie is so simple, so straightforward. It's actually, it was at the time the first of his movies that didn't have him in a writing credit role.
Oh, really?
This was actually written by a guy that was in the movie earlier, Robert Siegel, who wrote the Onion movie. Do you remember that? That was a thing.
I remember it being a thing, but I didn't. Maybe I did watch it. I don't remember if I watched it or not.
He wrote and directed Big Fan with Patton Oswalt, which I really like. That's an excellent movie about a guy that's a rabid football fan who gets beat up by his favorite football player. Real dark. And he also wrote Turbo, the snail racing movie.
Oh, that's the one that I showed to my kindergartners, and I was concerned about the fact that they thought if they drank, what was it, nitrous
Oh yeah,
Is it
nitrous oxide.
I want to say that, but I feel like it's
nitrous.
wrong.
I think racers and stuff just say nitrous.
Well, anyways, I was concerned about the fact that I thought they might get the impression if you drank that, then you would go really fast, because that's how
Well,
a kindergarten brain works, and
you drink it.
that's what the snails do. The snails get immersed in the nitrous and they flow around, and they obviously are drinking it and are like covered in it, and then they're super fast snails.
Don't do drugs, kids. Anyway, of course, music in this movie, as all of Aronofsky's films, was scored by Clint Mansell, who I
love.
Who has done all of Aronofsky's scores. His first score that he ever composed was for Pi, for an Aronofsky film. So he's been with Darren Aronofsky since the beginning. Of course, he composed Summer Overture for Requiem for a Dream, aka the trailer song that it is like the trailer song.
Right, yeah.
But he's also, I mean, you can just look at his IMDb page. He's done a lot of really impressive stuff. He scored Moon, Stoker, the Park Chan-wook film, and High Rise, most recently, High Rise with Tom Hiddleston. But yeah, Darren Aronofsky is a really interesting filmmaker that I don't think knows how to make a bad movie. Every movie he's made is great. If not, I mean, he's got a couple of masterpieces under his belt.
Well, I mean, the two that I've seen, I love. Well, 3 now.
Yeah,
and this for me, okay, so
this is not your kind of movie,
right? This is way out of my genres,
Yeah.
way far out of them. This is not a movie that I would probably ever sit down to watch with you, except for the podcast. The podcast has forced me to watch. I'm sure you are so happy about this, that it's forced me to watch a lot of movies that I just wouldn't watch. And it's not because I don't realize that it would be a good movie. This is an exceptional movie. It's fantastic.
Oh, yeah,
the
it's
writing
great.
is solid. The acting is solid. Everything about it is great. I'm just not drawn to watching this kind of stuff, and with my limited free time that I have, it's not something that I'm going to put into
You don't opt.
my brain.
Yeah, you don't opt into this. I
But
get
Black
it.
Swan, however, is kind of horror. It sort of verges on
Oh,
a
yeah,
horror film.
for sure.
And so that was definitely in my genre, and I loved the hell out of that movie. And then Noah is, let's be real, a fantasy movie. So
Oh, and that's what I think is really great about it, is that they took a concept that is in any context, you take out the religious context and it is fantasy.
Oh, yeah.
It is
But
mythology.
come-
I mean, he made the Bible version of Clash of the Titans or something.
But this, I don't understand why people wouldn't recognize it for being fantastic, because it's probably the truest to the Old Testament that we're going to get with some of that
Yeah,
stuff
maybe.
in movies. I mean, it is.
Of course, it's not accurate to the letter of the word, so to speak.
No, but I'm talking about like the creatures and all that kind of stuff that are in there. They talk about some crazy shit in the Bible, and it is mythology. It's absolutely go look up the definition of mythology. Mythology is a story where a god is interacting with man, and it is mythology. The Bible is absolutely, and they make it into what those should be, where it's talking about crazy things, fantastic
Giants
creatures.
and rock monsters and angels and demons
Right.
and dudes that live to be 900 years old that live in a
That's
cave
crazy
and
shit. That's
use
fantasy.
use drugs to see the future and shit. That movie is incredible.
And I'm not talking about fantasy as in like I'm bashing the Bible. I mean, it's just you have to recognize that stuff is there, and that I don't know. I just think it's a fantastic portrayal.
I do too. I really like Noah. That this has become the championing Noah episode of pop. But that's an episode we've got to do. We've got to do Noah. So we are now seeing the downward spiral of our character, of our main
Right.
character, and kind of getting close-ish to the end of the movie.
Well, we saw him go up, and we saw him go up these little increments, and now it just when you thought he was gonna make something of himself, not make something of himself, but our perception of what happiness would be for him, he squanders it because he gets into an argument with Cassidy, and because he wants it to move faster, I feel, than she is ready for. And she tells him there's nothing whatsoever, which isn't true. But that's what she tells him. And instead of taking the rejection and being like, I'll win her over, he just goes out and goes to a wrestling match, watches what he used to be, and then lies and tells a girl that he was in a wrestling match when he wasn't, has sex with her, does drugs, and forgets to take his daughter out to dinner.
I think his issue is that he has psychologically tied the end of his wrestling career with the end of Pam's stripping career. She quits, he quits. She starts over, he starts over. And in his mind, they do this together. He's quitting because she's quitting. He's starting over because she's starting over. And they're doing these things in tandem. He's kind of matching her steps and her moves.
But I don't think she is starting over stripping.
No, well, she's not No. She's quitting. She's going to quit stripping.
Right.
She had said that she was planning on quitting stripping and moving with her son. And I think that he has kind of tied the end of his wrestling career to the end of her stripping career. But the one thing that he's got wrong, that in his mind, he's matching her steps because he intends to start over with her. Start a new life, I mean.
Right.
And that's his intention.
Yes.
Right? And he even says something about that. She says, I've got baggage. I've got a kid. You don't want that. And he says, well, maybe I do. You don't know what I want. I mean, he has a kid too.
And we do see him as being fantastic with kids, specifically little boys. And we're sitting here again as the audience going, oh, this would be so good for him.
He would be a great, he would be a great dad. If he stepped up to the plate and actually did it, like he didn't do with Stephanie, and we're kind of seeing the fallout of that right here. He would be a great dad. But this is, he made a date with Stephanie, and it was, he earned her trust back, made a date. She said, okay. And then he went out and partied all night and missed the date. And she is tired of giving him second chances.
And I love the physical themes that we're seeing flow through in this. He's getting beat up by her physically. She's throwing things at him that are hitting him. Mm-hmm. And then he holds her. He puts her into a hold. And because he is the top wrestler, right, the opponent that he has can't get out of it, and he forces her to sit down, and he's able to physically dominate her like that.
Yeah, it's a good pull. That's good.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. Evan Rachel Wood's really good in this. She's the thing that really stood out to me about this scene is she's she's breaking down and he's apologizing and she's saying, I'm done with you. She says right here, I don't ever want to see you again. I'm tired of giving you second chances. For most of that scene, she doesn't look him in the face. She doesn't want to look at him. She's looking away.
And I love how calm she is right here when she does look at him. And she is totally calm and totally serious and just says, don't ever come back.
That girl that he fucked from the bar, she said something, and I thought it was a weird line, but she said, you want a party like a fireman party? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, what is a fireman party like?
And then
he wakes up in her bedroom
and has fireman boots on.
And there's fireman boots on him, and there's fireman posters. Like, she's really into firemen, obviously.
I thought it was just a random weird line, like from a drunk girl, but I guess it was intentional.
This is the interesting thing. We have subtitles on, closed captions on, because we always do when we take notes and stuff. And the closed captions said that while she was wailing in the bathroom as he's fucking her, it says that she is imitating a siren.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
I wouldn't have caught that either if it wasn't in the captions. I'm like, imitating siren? She's not imitating. What is that? Is that what that sounds like? I had never caught that before, and without the closed captions there, I wouldn't have caught that. But I guess that when she fucks, she likes to make fire truck sounds.
Sorry to laugh if that's what you do, Poopling.
But yeah, I mean, so, this is kind of the last part of his descent back to his lowest point.
Is the German potato salad.
Fuck that German potato salad.
Man,
did you ever have any shit like that?
Oh my God.
Did you have any people like this old lady that were like a little more, a little less, a little more, a little less?
I mean, not this outrageous, but I mean, kind of, yes, this outrageous. There were old ladies, always old ladies, who they wanted their meat and their cheese sliced so thin. They wanted it to be so thin that you could see through it. I'm not fucking kidding. And you had to do that shit, and you have to go, when you get that slicer to work like that, your slicer's got to be sharpened for one thing.
Yeah.
And you've also got to go so slow. And it's like a setting that's not on there. It's not like it's a setting. You just have to mess with it until you can get it that small. And you have to push down real hard and go real super slow when you're slicing it. And then inevitably they're going to keep telling you it's not thin enough. And then they're going to tell you they want it between separate pieces of paper. Every single slice between separate pieces of paper.
Oh,
and
wow.
it takes
you really know the struggle.
30 hours
You
to
really
slice
know.
their quarter. And they want like a quarter pound of 6 different things.
Oh,
Man.
Oh, no.
But the thing is I was really good at it, and I was always really nice to my customers. So they would specifically wait and be like, no, I want her to do it. And they would not go see other people until I would slice their meat or cheese because I could get it.
Oh, the
paper
trials
thin.
and tribulations of the deli worker.
I wanted to work in the bakery so bad, they got to frost cakes and cupcakes.
I think that's really a situation of like the grass is always greener. See, and that to you is probably really visceral because I don't know that you ever cut yourself on one of those slicers.
No, I did not. But it was terrifying.
But
all the
fear
time.
of God was in you, I'm sure, about
Right, but
cutting
that's
yourself.
what that thing is, that black flat thing with the handle that's dangling off the side of the slicer is a guard, and it's got like grips like cleats, and so you stick it onto the meat or the cheese, and then you use that to push back and forth with, so that your fingers are never anywhere near the blade.
But we do. So he is quitting his job, which is kind of the last step before he gets to his lowest point, which in this case is where he was before. He was at his lowest point when he was wrestling, and it is cyclical. He is back to his lowest point when he goes back to wrestling. But that scene right there where he finally quits his job, it really feels like a performance. And I don't mean that in the way that Mickey Rourke is performing. I mean that in the way that Randy is performing as a wrestler for the audience.
Yeah.
Where he's well, to get color, right? He got color.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just like he used the razor blade, he used that slicer to get color, wiped blood on his face, and thrashed around and left and made a show and put on a little performance for him before he walked out.
I will also say just one more comment. Go ahead.
But the reason that came about was because his fear finally came to pass, and that was that someone recognized him. And that's, after having such a bad day and having probably such a bad week with all of the rejection that he's gotten between Pam and Stephanie and then having to go to work, that's the last thing he wanted, and he was recognized, and that was it. So he is back to where he started.
Well, and and having the random sex with a girl that he doesn't know, who thought that he was someone who he wasn't because she thought he had wrestled when he hadn't because he lied to her.
Right, yeah.
And that instant gratification that came from that, and then that feeling when you wake up in the morning and you're just like, it was not. And we all do it, right? We all overeat or smoke a pack of cigarettes after we've quit, or get really drunk one night when you're way too old to be getting that drunk, or whatever it is that's your poison that maybe you did before, maybe you still do every now and then in moderation, but then you just overdo it and it feels so good right then, and then you immediately regret, and that regret feels so much worse than anything else, than any of the longing. And I think that's what he feels when he wakes up from that girl, that anonymous night of sex with not the person that he's actually attracted to and wants to be with. I don't want to say he's in love with.
No,
with
he's kind
Cassidy.
of on the rebound. He's been rejected, and he just wants. It's angry.
He does drugs when we saw he didn't even do drugs like that when he did his steroids.
No. He was
Right?
offered blow before,
And he didn't. So we see this is really the low point for him.
the lowest point. Actually, the guy earlier in the movie that was selling him drugs, he's a guy by the name of Scott Siegel. He was arrested a few months after this film's released for steroids possession and also assaulting federal officers.
Wow.
Life choices.
I like how this movie's got such tight writing, like this instance where she shows up at his trailer and you're just like, how did she know to come where he lived? And you're like, no, it's totally plausible because as she says, she got the info from the guy at the strip club, who we heard very briefly ask about drugs and say that he'd stopped by his house so he knew where he lived, that
Right.
he'd been there before. When writers are good, they make it look flawless, don't they?
I really like the name of the strip club. Cheeks.
Cheeks.
Cheequeus.
Yeah, cute.
It is pretty cute.
The last thing I was going to say about delis, and then I won't bother you anymore about what it's like to
All
work
right.
in a deli.
Give us the lowdown.
Was that we never sold anything off of our bars ever. Not the hot bar, not the cold bar. We never sold any of those salads. We never sold any of that stuff. And I'm just telling you guys, just for your health, unless you're going to some fancy ass grocery store, you don't want to buy it from those bars because they don't change it very often.
No, and a lot of that stuff has mayonnaise in it, and that's mayonnaise that sat out in open
Yeah.
air for hours.
At least in our store, we were pretty good, or at least I was pretty good about changing the meats and cheese when they were out of date. But that hot bar stuff and that cold bar stuff, it would just stay there forever.
Yeah, so we just met Bob, or the Ayatollah, who is Ram's arch nemesis, I guess. And of course, they're really good friends. Bob, I guess, has been, as we heard before, he's been selling used cars in New Mexico or Arizona or somewhere in the American Southwest.
Right. So he's someone who has gotten out of it, right?
Right. He's gotten out of it.
He's found a way out of it.
Made something of himself. Yeah, exactly. And they meet up, and he says, let's just do the old routine. He says, I'm the heel and you're the face, which are real wrestling terms. A heel is a villain and the face is the hero.
Right.
Right. But this scene right here, this moment where Cassidy finally has the epiphany that she is going to quit at this very moment. I don't see exactly where this comes from.
I feel like some of the beats from before were closer to where this should have been. Like that night where we saw her get rejected by some guys who she was like leaning over and she was saying to them, do you want a lap dance? And they were like, no, that's okay. And it happens to her a couple times. And then she goes over to Ram, and even Ram says, no, he doesn't want anything, that he's not ready for it after the heart attack.
Right.
And
that moment right there. Did you notice the moment where she says, you left your shoes?
yeah.
Do you know what that's a reference to?
No, what?
When not professional wrestlers, but like Olympic wrestlers, athletic wrestlers, when they retire, it is tradition to leave your boots, leave your shoes in the center of the ring.
Look at that. Look at this movie being clever
Isn't
like
that cute? That's so cool.
Nice. That's nice. That's good writing. But anyways, what was I saying? I was saying, in that beat, so she goes to Ram and asks if he wants a lap dance, and he's like, no. The person who is older, who is really into her, all of that stuff, says no to her. And then we see her look over, she walks away, and she looks over at a group of middle-aged businessmen, and she looks at them for a moment, and then she turns around and goes back to Ram and says, yes, I'll go out on a date with you, pretty much, or I'll go out to help you shop for the clothes. And I feel like that moment, like all those right there, all those beats of her getting the rejections and stuff felt very much like that amplified could have been reason for quitting the job on the scene.
But the moment that she decides to quit,
it doesn't feel that strong.
I don't know. It's weird. It's just, instead of using a moment of emotional tension or something, they just take a moment and say, that's it. That's the moment that she chooses.
And not that real life isn't like that sometimes.
Sure,
sometimes
right.
you walk out of your job on a slow day when nothing's gone wrong.
And you're just like, I'm done. Yeah,
I'm just done.
I get it. And, I can forgive it for that. But it does seem like a strange moment. But I do think it's cute that she leaves her shoes and they, that someone says, hey, you left your shoes. But yeah, so I think that there's, of course, a little parallel with Pam. She leaves the strip club and she refers to herself as Pam. She says Pam,
right,
as though she's reclaiming her name. She's no longer Cassidy. She says, I'm Pam.
Almost too on the nose.
It's almost too much, but the thing that makes it okay, I feel like there was probably a better way to introduce that point or introduce that beat, but it's very similar, and I think obviously paralleling the moment when Ram reclaims his real name, his quote-unquote real name, Randy, after he quits the deli, because he goes out to his car and he says, Robin, no Randy.
Right.
It's
Exactly.
it's not his birth name, but it's what he considers to be his real name.
Right.
Right.
And then, in this scene where everybody's cheering and stuff, we hear them say over the speakers, the immortal wrestler or something like that. And yes, that's what he's about to become. He is about to become the immortal wrestler because he is about to die doing this. I really think that's the reason I think he dies at the end of this movie is because he doesn't have any other where else to go character-wise in the story. That's why he dies at the end of this. That's why
Right.
I know
Where
he
else
dies.
could he go? I mean, Pam leaves. Like, he looks up to where she was standing, doesn't he? And she's gone by the time he does his special move.
Yeah.
So that's,
Well, and I didn't get the impression that she was really gone, but at least in his mind she was. So
he just came out to the song "Sweet Child of Mine" by Guns N' Roses, which was apparently donated to the movie by Axl Rose.
yeah.
Because the movie's budget was so small, and it was just probably the nicest thing old Axl Rose has ever done in his entire life. Because
Oh, yeah?
every story I've heard about Axl Rose is that he's a shitheel.
Oh, well.
So
Okay then.
good on you for that one, Axl. I guess you've really reserved your place in heaven. Yeah, but during his boxing career, Mickey Rourke actually had a boxing career, and that was the song that he would come out to, was "Sweet Child of Mine." So they wanted to get it for this movie, and they were able to because of the overwhelming generosity of Mr. Axl Rose. But yeah, so this speech that he's giving right here, he's basically just talking about the themes of the movie. He's talking about the main theme, I guess, the central theme, and that is feeling like you have grown too old you've grown irrelevant, becoming irrelevant, right? And the first time that they shot this scene, which was at a real event, a real Ring of Honor wrestling event, the crowd started catcalling and started calling out and booing and all sorts of shit during the monologue, as opposed to what they're supposed to do, which is giving him a standing ovation and just shower him with adoration. They end up heckling, right? And Darren Aronofsky had to come out into the ring and say, address the audience and tell them how important the scene was. And apparently the crowd gave themselves a "we fucked up" chant before they did the scene, right? They just said, "We fucked up, we fucked up," which is really amazing. But they did it right eventually, and they got the shot. But yeah, this is a Ring of Honor wrestling match. You can see ROH around. I actually used to tag promos for ROH to run on the CW in Chattanooga.
Oh, did you?
In Chattanooga, yeah. So I'm a little tiny bit familiar with this wrestling organization.
I don't want to spend I have something else I want to talk about, so I don't want to spend a lot on it. But man, the WWE has a long history with xenophobia, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. Just racism and xenophobia.
Racism and xenophobia as of July 2014, and I couldn't find anything from sooner than that. Maybe it's different. There has only been one black heavyweight WWE world champion ever.
Oh my God.
It would be 64 years.
Who is it?
I don't know. I didn't see. I just scanned the article. But yeah, so major race problems and also just xenophobia problems in WWE.
Representation is not, I don't think, one of their strong suits ever.
But I'm specifically like, people from other countries are always bad guys. Like,
yeah, you're not wrong.
And they get kind of political too. I was watching some clips where they were like they had Russian characters and stuff coming out who were obviously the bad guys, and it was like an anti-Snowden thing. It was really weird.
Oh, that is kind of weird.
But anyways, what I really wanted to talk about was just, aren't you glad that you've picked a profession where as you get older, it really won't make that big of a difference?
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like, you're going to be able to do this until either your mind goes or or, you just decide not to anymore.
Sure.
Pretty much, right? Like for me, being a teacher and a writer, it's pretty sedentary if I want it to be.
Yeah,
so.
exactly. I mean, if anything will kill me in my profession, it's sitting on my fat ass.
Right, yeah.
Like that's
Yeah.
that's the thing I've got to worry about the most. I don't have to worry about literally wearing my heart out.
No, I have to make sure. But it's not just, I don't just necessarily mean a career where like, you're going to work yourself to death. But I mean a career where, just like a stripper, and though I've argued against this with this movie, a career where you're not going to be as valuable as you get older. People aren't going to pay the money for your services, whatever they are, as you get older, because it's specifically about your age. And I think being an actor, an actress, a model, a stripper, a prostitute, a wrestler, any kind of bodybuilder, anything like that, anything where a big focus is on your body, even for singers, musicians.
It is. I mean, if you want to kind of boil down the definition of prostitution to, the sacrificing or the selling of your body for a particular service, not necessarily sexual, although we have talked about the sexual undertones of wrestling and how that is paralleled in this movie, specifically with stripping, which is obviously, sexual in nature. I think that, there is something to be said about that, but, it is, I guess it is a form of prostitution, and it is kind of a form of martyrdom a little bit. You're sacrificing yourself for the cause, whatever that may be. If it's self-serving, if it's, a passion, if it's your own thing, you're still kind of sacrificing yourself in the name of that cause, which kind of makes you a martyr. And in that way, I can see bringing those messianic themes back into the fold. Although I do think it's important to draw the line at, Christ's sacrifice being selfless,
and
whereas
this
is
self-serving.
self-serving.
But yeah, it makes me definitely happy to know that, most writers don't even hit their prime till they're in their 30s or 40s. So
we're getting, this
thanks.
is the final shot of the movie right here where he stands up on the...
And the whole time, I forget
post.
what his name is, the guy he's fighting.
The Ayatollah.
The Ayatollah. The whole time he's just like, you can stop. We don't have to go any farther, and he knows that he's not able to take it. And he just keeps pushing it. And just like the scene where he walks into the deli and the crowd cuts off and stops cheering when he walks through those doors, we have the same moment where we've got the cheering and he leaps and then
the crowd stops.
Silence.
It's supposed to be ambiguous, but I think it's clear that he died.
I think when you're talking character, you're talking story, you're talking themes, as a writer, looking at this from the perspective of the script, and the only place, if you added another 10 or 15 minutes to this movie, there's nowhere that it could go.
No,
you couldn't fix the problems.
Well, it can only devolve into melodrama.
Right. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, you can fix the problems. You can have him win the match and be okay, and then go home and he's got a girlfriend and his daughter says that it's okay, they can be friends and whatever.
That's
and
a
then
different end. Yeah, that's
all
saccharine.
Right, but that's what I'm saying is that it devolves into melodrama and it devolves into bad writing where you don't buy any of it and it doesn't make you feel the way it's supposed to make you feel. The messages don't fit anymore. And we've talked about it before, where that's the most important thing, is coming away with the message that you're supposed to come away with. You've got to keep it in mind.
And I feel like this movie is very thematically sound and very consistent, and it's got a lot of great ideas about
identity.
Identity is a big one, and feeling irrelevant, and ageism, and lots of this stuff.
And just age, just growing older.
Yeah, just being old, just having
and
to
art,
get old.
I think it's art too.
It's about art and what you sacrifice for art.
For instance,
and whether or not art is selfish.
We didn't mention this, but I don't think for Cassidy or Pam that's art for her. That's not her art, right?
No, and that's the difference. Like I said, when I said she works as a stripper and he is a wrestler.
Exactly.
When she reclaims her name, it is her birth name. It is her real name.
Yes.
When he reclaims his, it is his wrestling name.
Yes.
And that's the difference. I do feel like the one thing that has always kind of bugged me about this movie is that the movie perhaps unintentionally lays Randy's downward spiral at Pam's feet. She is the instigator of his downfall. Even if the reaction that he has is his fault, we talked about the one terrible thing he does in this movie, and that is when he kind of explodes at her and he tells her to get up on the stage and shake her ass and squeeze her titties together and all this stuff because she rejects him and she says,
Right.
whatever you think we have, we don't have. I can't do this. You don't want this baggage.
And I
We
don't
touched
think
on
it's a real rejection. I think it's her questioning herself and her questioning her situation. And
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's normal in a relationship for
her
those
just
kind of things.
being self-conscious, and I totally understand
And
that.
let's be real, guys. Sometimes you've got to, come back a couple times before the girl's gonna say, "Okay, no, you're right. I do like you." It does happen like that sometimes.
I
so.
do see both sides of it, but that's the one thing that's only ever stuck with me is that the movie maybe accidentally lays that at her feet, and I think that's a little unfair to her as a character. But she's certainly not as complete a character as I think Randy is, but he is.
But she's got a lot of characterization.
She's got a lot going for her, and the movie is called The Wrestler. So
Yeah.
Final thoughts on The Wrestler?
I'm not in my genre. I would never watch it except for this podcast, but it's a fantastic movie. So
Yeah, it's real good, really great pick. Not what I would have expected our first Aronofsky to be, but I'm happy that it is.
definitely not with the other options out there.
But
Yeah.
there will be more
It's a
Aronofsky
good
coming
movie,
down the pipeline, and that is a promise. So I guess that'll wrap us up for this episode. As always, you can find us on our website at popcornpoops.com. You can subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and YouTube. You can follow us on social media on Twitter at popcornpoops, or individually, I am at Dusty Cram Cram.
I am at J. Casper Kramer.
You can also like our Facebook page and follow us on Instagram. And social media is the best way to stay updated about the show, including getting our weekly movie still identification game, which is a lot of fun if you want to participate in that. You can also subscribe to us or follow us on Twitch. That is twitch.tv/thepixelpoops. Again, we don't have a schedule or anything like that. So if you follow us and turn on notifications, that will be the best way to know whenever the spirit moves us, so to speak, to stream some games and have a little bit of fun. If you want to support the show, of course, you can go to our shop on our website and buy some merchandise that is branded with Popcorn Poops. You can donate by clicking the donut button on our website, or you can go to audibletrial.com/popcornpoops and sign up for a free trial. And the best way, as always, to support the show is by submitting a rating and review on iTunes or Stitcher. And if you do that, we will read it at the top of the show. Again, our Poop Pal for this week was the Projection Booth podcast. Please check those guys out at projection-booth.com. They're doing a lot of great work over there. Next week,
Yeah.
what are we watching for? #Poopling Picks Month.
We are watching Tom Holland's 1985 film, Fright Night.
Oh my goshness, that sounds so nice.
Sounds definitely like
Sounds
a Jessica
good to-
movie to me.
It sounds like a Dustin movie as well. This is going to be
True.
a fun episode, and I can't wait. So until next time, take care.
Bye-bye.
We are the Popcorn Poops.